talked about the your comparison of your renewable standard in Michigan to Ohio's.
Yeah.
Ohio included advanced nuclear power in
Right.
its. Did yours?
No, ours was a traditional renewable energy standard, and so that's why 10% by 2015. Now you guys had the 12.5 and 12.5, and you had a broader definition, but you still had a component there for renewables as well. So it was comparable on the renewable side, but ours was not as expansive as yours was.
What do you think of the idea of including nuclear in that mix?
Well, I think it's going to be part of the conversation, and it is clean. The question is what has happened in Japan. Will it affect the siting of new facilities in the United States? And I think it will. If you have a broad standard that gets you, for example, the president has called for 80% by 2035 with a broad definition. So if nuclear doesn't fill up as much of it as many would want it to, then others will fill up that. And so I think having a broad enough definition to see what happens and where the technology goes and where the regulation goes and where the acceptance is a smart move.
How many states do have renewable energy portfolio standards?
30. Is it 30? 29. 29. Right, 29 in Washington, D.C. But here's the kicker, is that it's a patchwork, right? So every state's different. And some are voluntary, some are mandatory, some have aggressive, some are not. California has a 33% standard, renewable energy standard. And for job providers who want access to an entire country's market, they're making decisions, right? Where do I go? The United States is kind of catch as catch can. People, governments that flip over, Democrat, Republican, are changing potentially their standards. If they don't see a national market, they're going to go to the less risky decision where there is a national market they can build in China and export to the United States. Why not? Then you have the best of both worlds, right? So that's why, as a nation, we've got to have a national standard because of this patchwork.
But China doesn't have a national. Do they have a national?
Yeah.
Do they have a renewable energy standard?
20% by 2020. In their 12th five-year plan, which was just out, they committed to 20% by 2020.
You talk a lot about China, and I've spoken with several engineers that have done the research and development, can't seem to get over to the commercialization of the mass production with manufacturing here in Ohio.
Right.
I imagine it's going on in other Midwest states that do the same thing. And I had one woman who did work for the Department of Defense. She does Star Sailor, which is a wind. It's not a turbine; it's a horizontal wind, non-invasive. She wants
Small
it for
wind
urban areas, correct. And she said to me, Nicole, China wants to buy me out.
Right.
How do we prevent, in a national policy way, from we have the technology in our country. It's going over and being created cheaply and then being sold back to us.
Right.
And they're taking on both ends. And I don't necessarily agree that, you talk about quality products, and China is not necessarily making quality products and selling them back to us. We could do it better.
Right.
How do you form a national policy around preserving our research and development, which is sort of our intellectual...
Well, let me get to the research and development, because this point, and I wish I had made it in there because I think it's so critical. When the manufacturing goes, the research and development follows, because the engineers want to see how this product is coming off the line. You can't separate R&D from manufacturing. And so for those who think that, we're losing this low-skill manufacturing stuff, but we'll keep the R&D, it's not going to happen. You ask any business owner, and they'll say, we've got to have the R&D and the manufacturing. So this is why it's another argument on the pile for why we have to have national policy here that keeps and provides the means for those who want to take technology to scale to have access to capital at a low interest rate. Why can't we have a national renewable energy bank that allows for renewable energy companies to have a low interest loan that is given on a timely basis and not having to have them wait for 18 months because speed to market is so critical.
We have here Third Frontier, which gives out grants for that type of thing, which has been successful. But some of these same people that have done the work, the research and development, they're done, they're ready to go to production. Even venture capitalists today are not investing. How do you get people back, traditionally venture capitalists, in these types of...
The venture capitalists will invest where there is a market. And that's why, again, it comes back to federal policy. If we don't have federal policy, we will not get the investments, period. And that's why we continue to drop in the rungs of global investment.
Governor, what would you say are the three biggest hurdles to getting this national policy, since you said, every president since JFK's talked about it?
Right. I mean, I think one is that there is a failure to recognize that we're in a global economy on the part of some, and this adherence to an old economic theory that suggests that if we just had got out of the way and allowed business to do what they wanted, then all of a sudden jobs would be created. But as we have seen, even on a tax basis, if you provide zero taxes to a company, they're still going to move for other reasons. So the question is for us as a nation that we need to get our arms around the fact that other countries are competing to win, and we have to have national policy that creates these manufacturing jobs in America. So one is, I'd say, I'm sorry to go on so long, but I think that adherence to an old economic theory is hampering our ability to convince many who still believe in this sort of hands-off kind of policy. Second is the fear that moving to renewables will increase prices. And while new technology is more expensive, there's no doubt about it, but as you invest and take it to scale, that technology becomes less expensive. And I would just again point to Michigan's experience in our renewable energy standard did not change the price of electricity in Michigan at all. So that, I think that those are the two biggest challenges, the fear of high cost and the adherence to an old economic theory that is not applicable in a global economy.
Is there any indication that Michigan is going to repeal its renewable energy standards or undo the work that you...
We have not heard that they intend to do that. In fact, the utilities, I think, would be up in arms about it, because we were partners with the utilities, and especially on energy efficiency, we decoupled energy use from paying the utilities. So in other words, now they are rewarded for more energy efficiency rather than more energy usage. And I think they would object, because they're now really invested in this energy optimization plan.
One last question.
You mentioned the Michigan Economic Development Corporation out
Yes.
there. Ohio is looking at going the private nonprofit route as well now. How, what was your experience with that corporation, and how much of a role did it play in this area?
Oh, huge. It was huge. I mean, that MEDC was my jobs agency, and they were absolutely fundamental in helping to restructure our economy, diversifying our economy, going after these clean energy companies. We were completely aligned in making it happen, and in pushing for the policy through the legislature. They were very, very aggressive and very active. Thank you, ma'am. Okay,
Thank you,
appreciate it,
Governor.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right, good luck.